developers. Windows has become awesome for a variety of reasons, but one of them is Windows Subsystem for Linux, or VSL. It allows us to run a Linux distribution, such as Ubuntu or Debian, directly on Windows, unmodified, without the overhead of a traditional virtual machine or dual boot setup. You can use Linux applications, utilities, and Bash command line tool directly from Windows. Once we will have it set up, we can just open the command line and start working with the file system like you are on Linux. And that's because you are, in fact, on Linux and Windows at the same time. You must be running Windows 10 version 2004 and higher, or Windows 11 in order to proceed. If you are running an older version of Windows, please follow the steps from learnmicrosoft.com. In order to check your Windows version, hit the Windows and R keys and run the winvar command. Go to the Start menu and open a new PowerShell session as an administrator. Then enter WSL install. This command will enable the features necessary to run WSL and install the Ubuntu distribution of Linux. Once the command is executed, you will have to reboot your PC. Next, you will have to go to the Windows Store and search for Ubuntu. I will be using version 2004.5 LTS. Click on the Get button, and once it's downloaded, click on Open. It will ask you to create a Unix user account. That means setting a username and a password. You can have one or many Linux distributions installed in parallel. For example, if I go to File Explorer, I can see a new element there called Linux, and under it, all my installed distros. You can basically navigate through the Linux files using the File Explorer. If I run VSL flag L flag V in PowerShell, I get a list of all my installed Linux distributions and the VSL version for each. If I want to change the VSL version, I can just run VSL set default version 2. If you want to open a new terminal and access any one of your Linux distributions, you can do it directly from the terminal app. Click on the drop-down arrow and select the instance that you want to connect to. As you can see, I have a Windows terminal and two Linux terminals opened at the same time and running in parallel. Remember that when we installed Docker Desktop, we opted for the use of the VSL2 backend. You could run Docker on Windows without the use of VSL, and you could also develop web applications on Windows without VSL. But Docker runs much better using the VSL2 backend. And guess what? Your favorite IDE, PHP Storm, also fully supports integration with VSL2 and Docker, of course. One easy way of checking if Docker is installed would be to run docker -v command. And surprise, it seems that in this Linux distribution, we don't have Docker enabled. Running the same command on a different Linux distribution shows that we have Docker enabled. So how can we solve this? Open the Docker Desktop app and under Resources WSL Integration, enable integration with the desired Linux distro and click Apply and Restart. Let's run docker -v one more time. And there it is. Docker is now integrated with our Ubuntu 2004 running on WSL. There's one more thing we need to do before we can start coding. Go to your local/users folder under your user and create a .vsl config file, and inside it set a maximum value for the amount of RAM VSL can use. This will configure settings globally across all installed Linux distributions running as the VSL2 version.